Today I'm going to talk to you about how social and agroecological diversity enhance ecosystem and enterprise resilience. Biodiversity refers to the number of different species living in a particular ecosystem. The ecological literature is rich in examples of how biodiversity enhances ecosystem function and contributes to ecological resilience. Despite its importance, our knowledge of biodiversity is uneven and biased towards the species level, especially if those species are large animals. This results in large gaps. One of those gaps is the diversity of humans and human management and the pressures these humans exert on ecological and agroecological systems. There are multiple ways to think about diversity. Biodiversity and its multiple scales are one way to think about diversity, but management diversity is another way to think about it, and it too has multiple scales. Much of the ecological literature on diversity translates to agricultural systems and provides insights on how plant diversity, including crop diversity, as well as land use and management, can combine to enhance agricultural productivity and increase agricultural system resilience. Biodiversity in agricultural systems is associated with sustaining critical ecosystem services and processes such as nutrient and water cycling, pest and disease regulation, as well as providing resilience to highly variable weather resulting from climate change. In this talk, we will look at research from the USDA ARS Northern Great Plains Research Lab, a long-term agroecological research network site, and its efforts to enhance both ecosystem resilience and enterprise resilience through a promotion of social and agroecological diversity. The Northern Great Plains are at a climatic, productivity, and cultural boundary where the croplands of the Midwest transition into the grasslands of the West. We explore parts of the socio-agroecological system in the context of integrated crop livestock systems and address how the diversity within these systems can provide both opportunities and challenges for land managers in this region. I am a rangeland ecologist, so I will present this from the perspective of grasslands and beef production systems. One of the biggest challenges for maintaining enterprise resilience in this part of the US is winter hardness. For grazing lands, a primary focus for most beef producers in this region is minimizing stored hay costs. Therefore, finding alternative forages that extend the length of the grazing season is a priority. However, in this region of the US, we have seen homogenization of ecosystems with the invasion of Kentucky bluegrass. The National Resources Inventory show that Kentucky bluegrass is present in 82% of the areas sampled. And of these areas where it is present, there is at least 50% cover of Kentucky bluegrass in 33% of them. The inherent native plant productivity associated with rangelands in the Northern Great Plains is or was a major asset to the livestock industry. As invading cool season grasses reduce plant diversity, there are reductions in forage quality as livestock no longer have actively growing plants to select from during the summer portion of the growing season. Considering projected climate changes for this region and the possibilities for more extreme events, this is of concern and calls for building resilience in grazing land management and calls for managing for agroecological diversity to enhance ecosystem and enterprise resilience. But are landowners willing to make a management change on their grasslands to improve plant diversity, given that some of them are actually still experiencing weight gains despite the changes in plant community composition? And our research shows that they're not really willing to change at this point. In a survey that colleagues at Virginia Tech and I did in North Dakota last year, we looked at landowners' management intentions for invasive grasses based on how acceptable or unacceptable it would be if an invasive grass changed key ecosystem services. Using a mixed model, we looked at trade-offs in ecosystem services by modeling acceptability when certain services increased, decreased, or did not change. If all services benefited, we'd expect an increase to moderately acceptable. But if all services are reduced, we see a big drop to extremely unacceptable. If a grass benefits forage and does not affect other services, acceptability increases. From here, we can explore how acceptability changes based on trade-offs between forage gains and losses in other services. Our model predicts that landowners would rate Kentucky bluegrass at advanced stages of invasion as only slightly acceptable. We found that acceptability explains a large amount of variance in intentions to manage a species. The more unacceptable landowners view a grass species, the more likely they are to intend to reduce or control it. But recall the expected acceptability of Kentucky bluegrass in the previous slide was just above 3 or slightly unacceptable. This relates to a slight consideration of changing management, but is still in the realm where many landowners will probably not change their current management practices. We found that ecosystem service losses may need to be quite severe before North Dakota landowners take action to control any new invasive grass species. The only scenario prompting a definitive intention among landowners to control a new species was when all ecosystem services were reduced. Additionally, the best available information right now suggests that there are two viable options to manage invasion. One through pesticides, which are cost prohibitive and have adverse effect on pollinators and other services. The other through prescribed fire. In 2016, colleagues from NDSU and I did a survey in North Dakota where we evaluated landowner perceptions towards prescribed fire. We found out that ranchers are not necessarily on board with the idea of using prescribed fire. So where does that leave us? I would argue that it leaves us in a pretty vulnerable state, a very species poor state, where any extreme event could cause great fluctuations in ecological function. In North Dakota, we see a transition of cropland to grassland systems within the state, with the east being mostly cropland and the west having a majority of grassland production systems with much less cropland. The USDA ARS Northern Great Plains Research Lab, where I am located at, and most of my co-authors are located at, is located in this transition zone between land management types. This provides our location with the opportunity to have both a cropland LTAR common experiment and a grazing land LTAR common experiment. Having this variety of land uses, many within the same soils and ecological site, allows us to compare the impact of these land uses and also to use the combined expertise from different scientific and management disciplines to develop integrated cropland and livestock systems to address agricultural as well as natural resource issues. We explore the concept of diversity and its roles in maximizing ecosystem services in an integrated crop livestock agricultural system. In 2015, Aguilar et al. Quantified temporal and spatial crop species diversity at the county level for the contiguous US. They reported that between 1978 and 2012, crop diversity increased in central North Dakota. During this time period, conservation tillage and no-till rapidly increased. This likely allowed producers to expand their crop portfolio to take advantage of the conserved soil water. The more diverse crop rotations likely also help to control weed and disease cycles, thus facilitating the added diversity. This expanded crop portfolio provides a way of overcoming a lack of crop diversity. Agricultural resilience comes from harnessing this diversity to build systems that include these crops and integrate livestock as part of the system. When a forage shortage or weather-limited row crop production occurs, annual crops can be harvested as high-quality forages by haying or grazing, which provides a way of adapting to erratic weather patterns in the northern Great Plains. For your reference, I've included a few papers that came out of our research station describing the system and highlighting some of the benefits and challenges of this system. Adding livestock to a cropping system complements both crops and livestock by adding value to the grain, allowing for efficient nutrient cycling, provide an opportunity to add species diversity to the cropping system, and take advantage of synergisms and niche complementarity effects among plant species for greater productivity throughout the growing season than a monoculture system. One challenge to implementing such a system includes the cost of having two types of operation. In many cases, capital investments may be necessary if integration is to occur, and this may serve as a barrier to adoption of many of these systems. Integrated systems often require more labor and may thus be challenged if their is a decrease in labor supply or increasing labor costs. Another challenge includes the amount of logistics and labor involved. Integrating dynamic cropping systems with livestock production increases the complexity of management. However, it also creates synergies among system components that may improve resilience and sustainability while fulfilling multiple ecosystem service functions. In the same survey I mentioned earlier in North Dakota that was conducted with colleagues at Virginia Tech, we asked a few questions regarding integrated crop livestock systems. We found that for 45% of our respondents, integrated crop livestock systems are a very important part of their operation. For 19%, they were somewhat important, and for 37%, they were not important at all. For those who have some sort of crop livestock integration, 50% planted diverse crops, which included some forages, 33 specifically planted forages, and the rest were planting small grains or corn. The livestock used within these integrated crop livestock systems was a majority beef cattle, with less than 5% using goats, horses, sheep, or wildlife. This is great, but we are only halfway there and still have a lot of room for improvement. In 2019, the USDA Economic Research Service reported on diverse family farms and how different farm typologies influence agricultural management. This economic service research report highlights how national averages can mask variation among many sizes and types of farms. We try to use some of those variables from our survey that are part of this farm typology used by the ERS to determine levels of farm diversity within our sample for both of the North Dakota surveys. For the fire survey, we looked at differences in willingness to use fire, and we found that ranchers in general were much less willing to burn than the general public. We also found that for those with economic and time constraints, they were less likely to adopt a new practice like prescribed fire. For the survey addressing bluegrass invasion, we tried to see how social diversity varied across adopters on integrated crop livestock systems, but we found no significant differences. So to conclude, we can say that there are management practices and management systems that can provide biotic as well as management diversity, ultimately enhancing enterprise resilience under projected variability in weather. However, not everyone may be able to have crops on livestock. Having both is very management intensive. So communities of landowners, some who ranch, some who crop, could interact to still create a system that optimizes each other's operations. So here we're talking about building resilience through community. There is a need to create or enhance communities of landowners, ranchers, and extension that combine different types of knowledge and experiences that contribute to such adaptation. We, as researchers, need to learn how landowners make decisions about what to do, how to do it, and when to do it, and build capacity and tools to helping make those decisions. With that, thank you. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me or any of my co-authors, or join us in the live Q&A session that will be held later this week.